welcome back to Buckle Up. My name is Rob Wilson and this is the Subaru Solterra, and today I'm going to find out if it's worth checking out in comparison to all the other electric crossovers. Okay, so let's start as we always do at the front of the vehicle, and my first thing to say is this is very heavily based on the Toyota BZ4X. I think Solterra is a better name than that because the Toyota sounds a bit like a fax machine, but I think it also looks better as well. I don't know why, but it's just maybe something about the Subaru badge that it just looks better on the front of this vehicle. It's still very similar to the Toyota, but I don't know, somehow it just works more. Still got these big chunky plastic cladding bits that go all the way around the wheel arches but then sort of encroach on the front bumper. You've got your scuff plate down here to make it look more off-roady than it probably actually is. Fog lights, and then you've also got your daytime running lights and headlights in here as well. This does appear to be a gap though. There's a lot of aero stuff going on, so I think this could be something to do with that. If you know, let me know in the comments down below. You've also got some aero bits going on there so the air can go around the wheel more. Obviously aero being efficient, those things are needed in an electric car, but yeah, that's sort of the front. So we'll go into the side where you can see the continuation of this black cladding around the wheel arch. You've got 20-inch wheels on this touring specification. You can get slightly smaller wheels on the lower spec car. You have a EV badge here proudly demonstrating that this is electric. You've got black mirror caps, black roof, some sort of slimline roof bars. They're there, and some more chunky cladding along the bottom, and then you sort of get to this bit where you think, oh, it's got a large rear spoiler, but no, because when you get round to the back you can see that the spoiler is there to trick the eye because it disappears in the middle. Obviously that's for aero reasons, but they've thought, oh yeah, just let's have that go all the way across, and then someone's looked at it from the side and gone, oh no, I don't like that, it's going to have a spoiler on it. But then they've gone, well no, it can't have a spoiler on it because then the airflow won't be as good. So there's been some sort of argument between the design team and the people who are there to make it as efficient as possible, the engineers, and the compromise is whatever that is. Anyway, not too much else to talk about. It looks very Toyota BZ4X from here, so I'll open up the boot, electric of course, and inside we've got 452 litres of space, which is reasonable. It's a nice square shape. You've got a little bit of underfloor storage where you can stick your cables. You've got a parcel shelf which once you've removed has nowhere to go, and if you fold the seats down, I'd love to tell you how much space there is, but it's not written anywhere in the Subaru press material on the Subaru website. Any review that's ever been done of this vehicle doesn't state how big the boot is with the seats down. It is a mystery. It is impossible to find. Toyota also don't have the information for the BZ4X. So what I actually think this is a black hole. Literally. Because they can't measure the amount of space in there. It's just, it must be too big. But yeah, that's the boot. It's got some hooks. Right, should we go and sit in the back, see what that's like? Okay, so now I'm in the back seats. For reference, I am 6'2" or 188 centimeters tall, and this driver's seat is set up in my position, and as you can see, I've got absolutely acres of knee room. I can just about slide my feet under the seat in front, which is a nice thing to have. This floor is almost completely flat, so if you did have someone in the middle, you wouldn't all be fighting for foot room. One issue is headroom, because I think if you're over 6 foot, which obviously I am, you might struggle a bit for headroom in here, because you've got this sunroof that goes pretty much from the front to the back with a bar in the middle. But yeah, it's because of how it's positioned, it is eating into headroom a bit there. In terms of things you've got back here, we've got in the center 3-stage heated seats here in the middle. Either side of that, we've got 2 USB-C chargers, and we've also got some aircon vents here as well. We don't have the ability to change the temperature, but we can change the amount of airflow coming through them. We've got some seat back pockets on both the front seats, and then in terms of space for a bottle of water, fits nicely in there, and it just, if you give it a squeeze, fits into the armrest as well. There's also a bit of a cubby in there, which I think you could probably put your phone into if you wanted to. But yeah, nice, easy to use, lots of space, very practical. In terms of materials, nice leather seats. You've got squidgy bits on top of the doors. Where you rest your arm is nice and comfortable as well. So yeah, and obviously it goes without saying, you've got ISOFIX. This is a Subaru. It's, you know, safety is one of its main priorities, so all of that stuff is tip-top as well. But yeah, that's the back, so I'll hop in the front and we can see what's going on there. Okay, so now I'm in the front of the Solterra, and this is very, very similar to the BZ4X, but I will talk about it anyway. Let's start off with the steering wheel, which is a little bit small. If you have ever been in a Peugeot in their cockpit, you will understand the principle of this. The steering wheel is much smaller, and then your dials or digital drivers cluster is above the top of the steering wheel when you're sat here. So I look above the steering wheel and I see my speed, etc. So that sort of removes the need for a heads-up display, which some of this car's rivals do have. But yeah, it is actually eating into what you can see out of the windscreen. It is that high up, so a little bit quirky, something to get used to. It does look very futuristic. It's all weird shapes and interesting materials. You've got your standard sort of soft plasticky leather bits, and then grey plastic up on here, but then you've got your gloss black on the bit in the center console here, and then you've got this weird like soft material that's, I don't know, it's like a fabric, but it's quite nice, and it definitely breaks up just a sea of grey or black plastic. In the center, this really is the centerpiece of this car. You've got the 12.3 inch touchscreen multifunction display, whatever you want to call it, and that'll run your Apple CarPlay and Android Auto wirelessly, which is really fantastic. I've used this screen now for a week. It's only gone wrong once, and that's pretty good by our standards. You know, we spend a lot of time in these press cars, and for it to only go wrong once is pretty good going. So I will give it high praise. It's also very quick to respond. It's just, yeah, having that big screen there is quite nice, and it makes the whole rest of the cabin look more premium because of it. You do actually get some buttons just below that screen here for changing the temperature up and down, and the fan speed as well, so you don't have to do it in the screen with your finger trying to judge where to get it on the screen. So I'm a really big fan that they've actually bothered to do the separate controls. Then you've got your drive selector down here, which you do by twisting it about, and some drive mode stuff over here, your handbrake and everything there. Then here, if I press this, is where your phone hides. So here it is, my phone, and that's actually where the Qi charging point is. There is also a USB-A in there should you need it, but you put that cover over and then you're not tempted to look at your phone, which is really good. That's definitely an influence of Subaru, obviously safety being their big thing. In terms of practicality, the door pockets have enough space for 2 big bottles of water. You've then got 2 big cup holders down here in the center, and if I open up this, I've got a little cubby in here, and this arm does slide backwards and forwards, but you do have to remove your bottle of water before you do that, otherwise it will crash into it. Now, glove box, it doesn't have one. There is no way of opening this part of the car, so you've got this cubby down here, which is in that sort of floating center console with the world's thickest manual. That belongs and lives down there. So that sort of means that you can't really use it for anything else, but also down there you do have a 12-volt socket and another couple of USB-Cs. Yeah, that's sort of it in terms of the cabin. I really like the design and think it's at least interesting. So what I'm going to do now is go out and drive it and see what it's like on the road. Okay, so driving the Subaru Solterra. Well, first impressions of the car are that it feels quite large on the road. Actually, it isn't. The dimensions are pretty similar to a lot of cars in this class, including the VW ID cars and the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Kia EV6. But I don't know, there's just maybe something about how the dashboard is set up and how the angular the front of the car is. It makes it feel bigger than it is. In terms of what this car has battery wise, it's a 71 kilowatt hour usable space battery, which means it's a little bit smaller than some of the stuff that VW offer and a little bit smaller than stuff that the Hyundai group offer. So the range is a little bit on the shorter side. This touring spec has a range of 257 miles on WLTP, and if you get the lower spec car, then that will actually increase the range to 289 miles on WLTP. Now, I've been living with this car for a week, courtesy of Subaru, and I haven't seen more than 229 miles on the dash readout when I've been charging it up at home, and that's with 100% battery. So 230 miles in the real world is sort of the figure you're looking at. Now, when I had a Ioniq 5 on test, that was reading 285 miles range. So that's the real world difference, I guess, between these cars. It's about 50 miles of usable range. So that's something to consider if range is an absolute must for you. Maybe look at some alternative options out there. But in terms of the driving experience, as I've said, you've got this slightly odd cockpit, which is reminiscent of the Peugeot iCockpit, where you've got the little steering wheel and then your dials above the top of the steering wheel rather than looking through the steering wheel to look at your dials. But what you can see through your steering wheel is that little camera that's checking if I'm looking where I'm going all of the time, which is a good safety feature to have. I'm not going to complain about that. What I can complain about is if you don't look at the road for a fraction of a second, it will start sending you warnings in your screen in front of you, and it will beep at you if you persist with not looking where you're going. Again, I like the idea. In principle, in practice, a little bit irritating. But that's a system that's on all Subarus now. Subaru is a very safety conscious brand. It's sort of like Volvo in that way, where, you know, that's its key sort of selling point. And with that, you obviously get all of these driver aid assist systems. So you've got your adaptive cruise control and your lane keep assist, and it keeps you in your lane when you're on a motorway and all of that stuff, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, all of that stuff you do get, which is a nice thing to have. So let's talk about the power figures, because it's the same regardless of which spec you go for. So you've got a 218 PS. So 218 PS doesn't sound like too much, but when you put your foot down, it does push you back into your seat, and you can switch between driver modes with this button on here. So I can be in normal or power mode, and then it does do that little push you back in your seat. Not as much as other electric cars I've been in, but it still has that charm, I guess. And then you've got 336 Newton meters of torque, and that is the key thing in an electric car. That motor has that instantaneous torque, so that's what really pushes you around in that sort of 0 to 30, 40 mile an hour range, and then it sort of slowly dies off the faster that you go. Top speed is 100 miles an hour. Again, not too dissimilar to rivals that are out there. Electric cars do not tend to go as fast top speed wise as their petrol or diesel equivalents. But unless you live in Germany, then that isn't really an issue. And then 0 to 60 is 6.9 seconds, so under 7 seconds to 60, which is pretty sprightly. As I said, you know, the electric motors, that instant torque, so that is quite good. It doesn't seem to weigh as much as its rivals either. It's hovering around the 2-ton mark. Rivals maybe 100 kilograms or so heavier, so that could be where that sprightliness is coming from. And then in terms of driving dynamics, well, it's a bit of an odd one because it's like every other Subaru that I've driven, the Forester, the Outback, it's incredibly softly sprung, so it's very comfortable. But then in this model, and I don't know if, because obviously it's sharing a lot of underpinnings with Toyota, the steering feels a lot heavier than it does in the Forester or the Outback. But I'm not complaining about that. It's actually, it's, I guess, a nice thing to have that bit of weighty steering that you tend to miss on electric vehicles. They tend to have super light steering, so it all feels a bit numb. But this, it doesn't have any feeling at all. I'm not pretending it's a sports car, but yeah, it's half decent, you know. It maybe gives it that false sense that it's better set up than it is, but because it's got that weight behind it, it really does feel quite nice to use. Now, this being a Subaru, it has to have some sort of off-road pedigree, and similar to other Subaru models, this does have an X mode, which is only really available at lower speeds. Obviously, if I try and press it there, it beeps at me and tells me I'm going too quickly to use X mode. But it does have the active torque split all-wheel drive, so in terms of its off-roadability, this is probably going to be slightly better than things you can get from VW Group or Hyundai Motor Group. I mean, I'm talking minutely here. We're not talking about this being some sort of off-road electric Defender rival, because it definitely isn't that. The ground clearance is only 200-ish mil, just a little bit more than that, so it's not brilliant, but a lot of electric cars do have quite low slung underbodies because that's where all the batteries are. And then finally, in terms of visibility, you do sit nice and high up, so you've got a good view of the road ahead. You've got nice big windows, glass house all around. Out the back, you can't really see all that much because it's got that sloping rear glass, and then you know that there's a bit of the car that sticks out beyond that, but you can't see that in the rear window. So you're going to be relying on the camera systems, and luckily those camera systems are very good, very clear, and you can actually, it has a camera system so you can see underneath the car as well. So if you are doing a bit of light off-roading, you can see if there's any big rocks, which is really good. That's usually only proper off-roaders that seem to have those sort of camera systems, so to see it on a car like this is welcome. But anyway, that's probably enough chattering on, so I shall pull over and we'll do a bit of a conclusion. Okay then, so that is the Subaru Solterra. What do I think? Well, I think it certainly looks interesting. The interior's way more different than especially those cars from the VW group. It's in the right sort of price range, but the range is probably its main detractor at this point. It's definitely worth checking out if you're interested, especially if you want the more off-roady, roughy-tufty looking electric crossover. But there you go. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like. If you've got something to say about it, go down and comment in the comment section below. But most importantly, please do subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're notified every time we make an upload. If you want to follow us, there's all the social media somewhere down there as well. And also, if you want to support the channel, we've got channel memberships and we've got merchandise, so check those out as well. But thank you again for watching, and I shall see you next time. Bye!